大家好，欢迎来到小静话天下，一起关心天下事。前几天，高志凯先生接受一位西亚主持人的访谈，这也是来找茬的，抛出各样刁钻和设有陷阱的问题。伊朗的战争如果持续下去，对中国难道没有好处吗？如果以色列真用核武器对付伊朗，你们还是只是嘴上谴责吗？你们会做些什么事情？这简直是来挑衅和逼问的。面对这样的状况，身经百战的高志凯先生也是气定神和，不正面硬刚，而是不被对方牵着鼻子走，富有智慧和信心的回复，充分展示了我们在国际上发言的学者们的智慧和才能。
Let me ask you something, Victor. Let's look at this current war against Iran from your point of view, not Beijing's, okay? Just you as an analyst. Here, I'd appreciate some of your famous frank talk, okay? What are the benefits for China as this war continues? And I mean, we know the negatives. You outlined those things. You know, this affects the world. It affects energy trade, which China needs. It affects, you know, international relations. We could be on the cusp of World War III. But let's talk about some of the benefits that China could gain. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it in a geopolitical way, just pure assessment and analysis. Do you not think, for instance, that Iran's demand that cargo traversing through the Strait of Hormuz must settle payments in yuan and potentially other non-Western currencies? Is this not a net gain for not just the Chinese, but also their multipolar goals, you know, from the BRICS to the SCO, from sort of creating new payment platforms the world around, and to put an end to Pax Americana? Tell me that side of it. Let's look at what the net gains could be.
Let me tell you my real feeling, and let me open up my mind and my heart to you. As far as China is concerned, there is no single net benefit for China at all for this war. This war is a war of aggression, and there are war crimes committed against the people in Iran, and there are shocking developments in this war. And there is no single benefit I can ever think about as far as China is concerned. China is completely calling for an immediate end to this war and for thorough investigations into any possible war crimes or crimes against humanity being committed in the course of this war. And for any country to dare to launch a war of aggression in the middle of an ongoing negotiation should be really investigated. And if any country believes and will do some calculation as to whether I gain more or lose more, probably that's not the real good exercise at all. So let me tell you, and hopefully through you, to your audience in the world, that we need to do whatever we can. We need to engage in international cooperation to put pressure on all the parties concerned to stop this war immediately. Let me make a point. China now accounts for more than 1/3 of global manufacturing output, larger than the United States, EU, and Japan combined together. And the Chinese yuan, the renminbi, only accounts for about 3% in international trade in terms of settlement and payment. My view is that the use of renminbi need to be increased the minimum by tenfold, increasing from about 3% now to about 30% eventually. By reaching 30% for the renminbi in global international trade, it will be just more or less proportional to the weight of the Chinese manufacturing and the Chinese contribution to additional GDP growth in the world. So no one should be shocked by the steady increase in the weighting of the renminbi in the world of today. And eventually, I think, with the war or without the war, the Chinese contribution to global economy, to manufacturing, to industrialization, urbanization, connectivity of all kinds, and to defending international trade, for example, free trade, will continue. And If any country wants to use renminbi to settle their trade in oil trade or gas trade or otherwise, we will always welcome. But we do not think this is a benefit that China will get for the continuation of this war. I want to see the war ending immediately, tonight, hopefully. And I want the United States and Israel to go back and search their soul. And they should never be allowed to launch another war of aggression against any other country, including against Iran. And Israel should never pretend that they have the truth. They have developed nuclear weapons. There are reports that on quite a few occasions they threaten to use nuclear war against other countries. They have no right to demand any other country, not only in the Middle East, but anywhere in the world, not to develop nuclear weapons because they violated the rules first. And they now possess nuclear weapons. They threaten to use nuclear weapons. I think eventually, as you mentioned, when we reach step 2 or step 3, we need to create a situation where there will be no nuclear weapon at all by any country in the Middle East. That probably will be a better Middle East. It will contribute to real peace and stability and peaceful coexistence between and among countries in the Middle East.
Victor, to your point about the chatter we're hearing increasingly that Israel may use a nuclear weapon in Iran, it seems to be very dangerous. I mean, we often see what Western media does and Western commentators, political commentators do is sort of lay the groundwork for something unpalatable that they plan to do. There's altogether too much chatter about Israel using nukes on Iran. 2 points about this. If Israel uses a nuclear weapon on Iran, doesn't that ultimately show that the Israeli and U.S. militaries are incapable of reaching goals with a middle state like Iran? It basically shows that there's nothing to their militaries. They had to use a weapon of mass destruction. The other thing, and this is the most important, I think, really our viewers would like to know, what happens to recognized nuclear powers like China and Russia if a undeclared state outside of all the systems meant to regulate nuclear weapons, right? The Non-Proliferation Treaty, for instance, uses a nuclear weapon? Doesn't that create a global South race to get one themselves as a defensive measure? Number one. Doesn't it teach people that Iran should have gotten a nuke way before? But let me ask you, what do you think Beijing's reaction would be as a responsible meaning like a recognized nuclear power, one of 5? What should Beijing do if an undeclared state uses a dirty bomb on an SCO and BRICS partner country? What do you think that reaction will be?
First of all, I want to tell the Israeli government and the Israeli leaders that the moment Israel uses a nuclear warhead against any other country, including against Iran, it will be the demise of Israel as a country, as a state. Why? Because by dropping a nuclear warhead against another country, Israel will become the public enemy number 1 of mankind, because mankind will never support Israel to use nuclear warhead against another country, killing hundreds of thousands, if not more, people, and they will really ignite huge condemnation among other countries against the government or the regime in Israel and causing the demise of Israel as a regime, as a country. Therefore, think twice and always use the Chinese wisdom that if you dare to use a nuclear weapon against any other country, you may cause the demise of your own country. That's number 1. Number 2 is that if Israel dares to use a nuclear warhead against other country, it will ironically accelerate the whole process of other countries in that part of the world try to build a nuclear bomb. And eventually there will be a huge explosive growth of nuclear weapons in that part of the world. And eventually it probably will cause the destruction of the whole region as, for example, a livable environment for hundreds of millions of people. I'm actually encouraged by one thing that President Trump said today when asked whether Israel will use a nuclear warhead. President Trump said, no, they will not. Very similarly and very firmly, and I hope President Trump is at least genuine in this particular point. So I hope peace eventually will prevail, sanity will come back, and Prime Minister Netanyahu should be halted from ever daring to think about using a nuclear warhead against other countries, because the consequences of doing so will be huge. And he himself and the government of Israel and the military in Israel will be considered public enemy number one for mankind.
But Israel is used to condemnation. It is the biggest violator of UN Security Council resolutions in the UNSC's history. Is condemnation enough? Can nuclear powers actually act in a scenario like this? Is it in the interest of nuclear powers? I'm not asking for secret plans, but surely countries like China and Russia cannot tolerate this kind of thing, and which will lead to exactly massive proliferation of these weapons. Must it not be nipped in the bud immediately so that nobody thinks of doing this again, is really my question to you. What can be done short other than condemnation?
It's not only condemnation. I mentioned the moment Israel dares to drop a bomb against other country will be the moment of the demise of Israel as a country or as a state. And there are different meanings in what I have said. It's not a threat against Israel. It's a threat against anyone in Israel who dares to think about using a nuclear warhead against other countries. And as I said, if they dare to do that, they will be public enemy number one. And this is not just condemnation. There will be huge consequences if Israel dares to use a nuclear weapon. Now, on the other hand, I think we all need to figure out why Israel believes it is in a position to dictate to the United States or even to order around how the US troops need to be deployed. And allow me to make one point. I think it is right now the high time to expunge the evil as represented by Jeffrey Epstein and whoever who is with him. Now, this is a very important point. I do not want to go into further details.
Does China have the files?
Well, eventually everything needs to come out to the sun. Let's wait.
Okay. I like that kind of strategic ambiguity.